Once upon a time, in the beautiful islands of the Aegean Sea, there lived a young, brave boy named Connor. Captain Connor, as he was called by his friends, was known far and wide for his kindness, bravery, and his love for sailing and exploring the islands with his colorful parrot named Romeo. Romeo was not an ordinary parrot, he was a witty and clever bird that could speak like humans and even solve riddles. Captain Connor loved adventure more than anything. He spent his days sailing to different islands with Romeo, exploring forests and caves, and collecting treasures from ancient ruins. One day, Connor and Romeo came across an old, undiscovered island, hidden behind a thick fog. Excited to explore, they set foot on the island and found themselves in a dense forest filled with strange and wondrous plants. As they ventured deeper into the forest, they stumbled upon a mysterious cave hidden behind a waterfall. The cave was filled with glittering treasures and ancient scrolls. It was a place of wonder and magic. But the most amazing treasure of all was an ancient, beautifully crafted sword that seemed to glow with a powerful aura. The moment Connor touched the sword, he felt a surge of power and energy. The sword was magical, and it granted Connor the ability to control the seas and the winds. With the sword in his hand, Connor became the most powerful, yet fair and helpful sailor in the Aegean Sea. He used his newfound powers to help other sailors in need, protect the islands from storms, and continue exploring the mysteries of the sea with Romeo by his side. News of Captain Connor and his magical sword spread far and wide, attracting the attention of other sailors, adventurers, and even pirates. One such pirate, Admiral Cast, was consumed with jealousy and greed. He wanted the magical sword for himself and would stop at nothing to get it. Admiral Cast was a cunning and powerful pirate who had a large crew of ruthless pirates under his command. He sailed the seas on his fearsome ship, the Dark Kraken, accompanied by his loyal right-hand man, Tin Head, a pirate with a metal helmet who showed no mercy to anyone who stood in their way. Together with his crew, Admiral Cast hatched a plan to defeat Captain Connor and steal the magical sword. They would challenge Connor to a duel on the high seas, and when he least expected it, they would ambush him with their superior numbers. As Captain Connor and Romeo sailed the seas, they began to hear whispers and warnings from other sailors about Admiral Cast and his plan. Connor knew that he had to be prepared for the upcoming battle, but he also knew that he could not defeat Admiral Cast's entire crew alone. He needed a cunning plan, and Romeo, his witty parrot friend, was the perfect partner to help him come up with one. Together, they hatched a plan to outsmart Admiral Cast and his crew. Captain Connor would challenge Admiral Cast to a duel on the high seas, just as the pirate had planned. However, instead of facing him alone, Connor would use the magical sword's power to summon a fleet of friendly sailors from all the islands in the Aegean Sea. The day of the duel arrived, and the two ships met in the open waters, with the sun shining brightly overhead. Captain Connor stood on the deck of his ship, the magical sword gleaming in his hand, while Admiral Cast and Tin Head stood confidently on the Dark Kraken, surrounded by their crew of pirates. "Admiral Cast," Connor shouted across the water, "I challenge you to a duel for the fate of my magical sword and the safety of these seas." Admiral Cast laughed, believing that he had already won. "Very well, Captain Connor. Let us see if your magical sword can protect you from the might of the Dark Kraken and my crew." As the two ships drew closer, Captain Connor raised his magical sword high above his head and called upon the power of the seas and the winds. Suddenly, a great storm appeared, with fierce winds and towering waves. The ships were tossed and turned in the chaos as the crews struggled to stay on their feet. Admiral Cast and his pirates were caught off guard by the storm, but they soon realized that Captain Connor was not alone. From the swirling mists and roaring waves, an entire fleet of ships appeared, filled with brave sailors from all the islands of the Aegean Sea. They had come to help Captain Connor in his hour of need, answering the call of the magical sword. The battle that followed was fierce and intense, with swords clashing, cannons blazing, and sailors and pirates fighting for their lives. In the midst of the chaos, Captain Connor and Admiral Cast met in a duel on the deck of the Dark Kraken, their swords ringing out as they fought for control of the magical sword. As the battle raged on, Romeo, the witty parrot, swooped down from the sky, snatching the magical sword from Connor's hand just as Admiral Cast lunged for it. With the sword safely in his beak, Romeo flew high above the battle, out of reach of the pirates. With the tide of the battle turning against him and his crew being overwhelmed by the brave sailors of the Aegean Sea, Admiral Cast finally surrendered. Captain Connor had won, and the magical sword remained in his possession. As the storm subsided and the seas calmed, Captain Connor looked upon the defeated Admiral Cast and his crew with a mixture of pity and understanding. Instead of punishing them or sending them to their doom, Captain Connor offered them a chance at redemption. "Admiral Cast," Connor said, his voice filled with compassion, "I know that you wanted my magical sword for its power, but true power is not found in objects, but in the bonds of friendship and the kindness of our hearts. I am willing to forgive you and your crew for your actions, and I invite you to join my crew of sailors, so we can work together to protect and help all the islands of the Aegean Sea." Admiral Cast, humbled by Captain Connor's words and his display of forgiveness, agreed to join Connor's crew, along with Tin Head and the rest of his pirates. From that day forward, they sailed the seas together as friends and allies, using their combined strength to protect the islands and ensure the safety of all who lived there. And so, the adventures of Captain Connor and his magical sword continued, with Romeo, the witty parrot, always by his side. They explored new islands, discovered lost treasures, and made countless friends along the way. The moral of the story is that true power comes not from force or possessions, but from the bonds of friendship, forgiveness, and the kindness of our hearts.